Okay, so that's in fact the problem, right? That there was a recent report in Harvard Business Review, a really interesting collection of charts that looked at the amount of time people spend watching television and discovered that in fact most of the people who spend most of the time watching television are over the age of 65. And that people of younger groups are watching less and less television, and yet at the same time they're spending a lot more time on other screens. And so this is this question of use space. How are we going to be using the technology? So the first question is, when you all are thinking about this, how do you really reach out to consumers and get a genuine sense of what's going on in the marketplace, of what people want?
I'll tell you that the answer is no. The producers looked at that. That was made on behalf of a network that wanted to do interactive television, and the producers looked at it and they said, well, we don't want that on our content. Like the people who make Mad Men said, no, we don't want that on the show. We like this idea of the related stuff that we can control. That's important, but not on the show. And so what's actually been happening, and I think you guys would probably agree, and CES was a big testament to this, is people are now starting to look at how does all of that interactive stuff that people have talked about happen on what is euphemistically referred to as the second screen. People are talking about, like, well, everyone's got a mobile device or a tablet or some kind of connected thing, and how do those things work in tandem, so that if you actually wanted more, if you wanted to go deeper into something, you know, the TV is kind of there, and you can interact with that stuff on another device. The other interesting thing that we're hearing people talk about and are actively building for some customers is going the other way. So you're here in this kind of thing, and then you want to put it up there to share. You know, like how can the TV actually become more of like the shared screen, and then people are, you know, kind of in their experience.
So that's closer to the Yumi model of saying it's a portal for people to interact rather than just for a professional producer.
I think the idea of interactivity is often overrated if it doesn't involve people in some way.
Ron, what do you think? Is
Sure.
it overrated?
Well, overrated. I'm not sure that angle of it. I mean, I think Zane makes a good point that the television is a great device for observing. It's not a great device for interacting. So that's a challenge, which is why you always have to think about, you know, how you're designing a user interface. You have to design around up, down, left, right, enter, right? That's a very limited use case, right? So the whole concept of taking the television and making it become, now that it has connectivity, making it become a first-class citizen in the connected home that we all have established by dropping in wireless routers into our home and having high-speed internet connections. We're now able to take the TV and make it a first-class part of that. So the whole concept of a remote control, that having this specified device that uses this ancient IR technology to control the TV, why do you need that anymore, right? Everything's on IP. Almost all the interactions we do is using IP networks to control every, you know, type in keyboards and send messages and talk to web servers and do everything else. So you could actually have your phone talk via your wireless network to control your TV. You can have your TV tell your iPad, hey, this is the show we're watching now, and have your iPad go off to the network and receive more content about it, and then say, oh, well, I found that there's these other things that I want to watch instead. Click a button on your iPad or click the screen on your iPad and have it play on your TV. So those are exactly the use cases that we were showing off at CES, like Zane says. That's exactly where things are going, is that we're driving this to a model where the television has become just part of an ecosystem of devices in your home that people have, and you'll be interacting with, and it'll fit in more naturally. It won't just be kind of this end device that's there to consume broadcast content.
Jim, when you sell into consumers' homes, how many boxes wind up in people's living rooms? Boxes or devices?
Yeah, no,
let's include the phone and the iPad.
Yeah, I think that, I agree with Zane. I think in the end, I think things like this end up being useful remote controls or input devices. But we started the premise to make it really simple, and we needed a box to do that. If you're going to have, video delivered over the internet, you need something to connect to the internet and put that on the TV. So we needed a box, but the box sort of disappears. I mean, it's small, it's sort of a, you see the TV. And people, today, I think the big question is whether the Blu-ray player will really, reach full adoption. People have DVD players, they're good enough for most people. People have a cable box, no one has a VCR anymore. So I think game consoles in some rooms, very prevalent. That's the usual list. But you inevitably end up with a couple, if not three.
Three. Okay, 3 boxes. Gina, how many boxes do you think we should have in our living room?
The best thing to do is actually put it in someone's home and see what happens, because that's where you figure out what they're really going to do with it and what they really want to do with it. And the reality is consumers don't want more boxes. Nobody wants more boxes. We don't want more remotes, right? So, I think there is going to be a trend towards how do you build this stuff in, either to your television or to something else. The reality is that the value of something like Yumi is not in the hardware, it's all in the cloud service. So that cloud service can deliver content that you've recorded using Yumi to Facebook, to YouTube, to wherever you want it, to your mobile phone even. So, that to me is the trend. It's in the cloud, you can get it wherever you are.
But you do need a box right now.
Today,
you need a box. So once
But,
again, we're still in this question of how far are we between, the vision and, what's the difference between us and the vision? Right?
Well, I think, people tell us this all the time, no one wants a box, but people, bought 1 million of them. So it's not,
It's 1 million people out of 350
but
million.
people bought Blu-ray players, no one wants a Blu-ray player, but it's a box. It's what you want is the solution. And if it means spending, $60 and plugging something in once, people are fine with that. So I think over time things can get integrated, just like your phone has now organizers that used to be a separate device, and they have cameras that used to be separate devices. But technology has to kind of progress at the right pace until all that comes together. You can't integrate the telepresence kind of technology into, or at least you can now, you couldn't integrate that into TV last year. So things have to kind of work their way through the adoption cycle and the technology cycle.
Yeah, it's true, and I think that's an important point. So there are going to be boxes for a long time, but the truth is consumers really, they buy the box because they like the solution, whatever it delivers, not because they actually like the box. And so, that I think is one of the interesting things about internet TV and connected TV is, is that kind of the model. When you're talking about video communications where you need a camera, it's a really challenging thing. But, maybe for some other types of content, it might be a better solution.
Now we've talked about a couple different types of content. There's sort of immediate real content that you as a consumer are actually creating, such as the Yumi model. There's movies that producers in Hollywood have created, and then there's sort of live television as well. What do you guys see as the mixture of those 3 things? If you could give me a percentage, what do you think currently? Let's ask it this way: what currently do you think is the mixture of those 3 things? One of them's easy, right? And then 5 years from now, what would you expect the mixture of those 3 things? The produced content, the say television, which is a little less produced maybe, and then the more immediate personal content. Anybody want to?
Oh, I think TV and movies are both produced content, and I would put them in the same category.
Same category?
Yeah,
no, they're sold differently.
I agree,
but
they're a complete narrative experience, anywhere from half an hour to 2.5 hours. I think the difference is when you get into very short form, it's a little different experience. So the dominant amount of watching is going to be on produced content because it's the best, it's the most entertaining. People spend $300 million to make Inception. People want to watch Inception. And I don't think that's going to change. I think what we'll add is that there'll be other forms on top of that, but that's still going to be the dominant type of content.
Yeah, I think maybe a better way to separate those out is on-demand content versus live content, right? And look at where that is, and I guess we have an immediate example of that is we just had the Super Bowl, the biggest TV event ever, right? 111 million people were tuned in the United States to watch that event. That's not going to go away. In fact, it's now grown every year. This is the most popular television event ever. So there will be events that will occur like that will continue to draw growing enormously large audiences, and they'll be very valuable for lots of reasons. You see the ads that were produced, you see how people watch it as much for the ads as for the content itself, right? So it's a great microcosm of a TV event that we see. And those are certainly going to happen. I mean, if you look at the most popular television programming, the American Idols and things like that, you know, they're very popular events. You know, tens of millions of people are tuning in at a certain amount of time. You know, I mean, one of the nice things we have about our systems, we get these, you know, interesting usage cases when, like, the Super Bowl is on and American Idol's on. We see blips in, you know, the usage of our systems and things like that. So we kind of can get a little view on how people watch television.
Let me come back.
Can I just say one more thing
Yeah,
about
please.
that? I predict that in 5 years, you'll be able to do that virtually. So you may actually be here in California and be watching some of those live events with a family member or a friend on the East Coast. Because that is definitely one of the use cases that comes up all the time. You know, can I watch the World Cup with my buddies in South America? Or, you know, can we watch the Super Bowl together or the Academy Award? You know, I mean, it's one of those things. Human beings, when they enjoy each other's company, they want to be together, whatever that experience is. So I think that's another direction. It sounds like science fiction today, but 5, 10 years from now, I think it's going to be just sort of the way we watch things together.
I think that if you take the viewing audience, right, defined as, you know, whatever, let's say 17-year-olds up, and you look at what's happening, I would break it down as produced content or premium content. I would look at that as, I'd probably say that's about 90%, and then I would say that at least 10% right now is user-generated. Right, like that's the split I would make, would be produced versus user-generated, whether it's short or long form. I mean, I think that is an important distinction, but user-generated often being short form, but I would look at that mix. And I would say that that's a really important trend to watch. And I would say that that was not the case 5 years ago.
Interesting. Right? And even though 10% sounds small, the percentage growth, therefore,
that's
that we'll
right.
be seeing will be fairly significant.
Right. And I would go as far as saying that it's 0% today, true interactive video. But I would actually, like if I were to bet over 25 years, I think that you can bet that the actual produced content is going to go down. Not that it's not the most important, not that it's not the best, right? Not that people will stop viewing it, but that the total viewing pie will grow, and that there will be a lot more user-generated consumption, and there will be a lot more true communication or interactive consumption, right? That will spend more and more time in front of screens. And so I don't know, it's a slightly different mix of numbers, but if I was betting, that's right.
Good. Let me open it up to questions. But
Yeah.